So the UN General Assembly voted overwhelmingly against America's recognition of Jerusalem. Is the UN fulfilling prophecy?
It's time for The Line of Fire with your host, activist, author, international speaker, and theologian, Dr. Michael Brown, your voice of moral, cultural, and spiritual revolution. Michael Brown is the director of the Coalition of Conscience and president of Fire School of Ministry. Get into The Line of Fire now by calling 866-34-TRUTH. That's 866-34-TRUTH. Here again is Dr. Michael Brown.
What a day for our thoroughly Jewish Thursday broadcast here on The Line of Fire. Michael Brown, welcome to our show. So glad to be sitting back in studio live. A whole lot going on in the Jewish Israel-related world, and we are right on top of it with some insight, not just from the contemporary news, but from the ancient scriptures as well. Welcome to all who are watching this broadcast live on Facebook, along with all those watching live on YouTube and listening live on radio stations around America and via internet around the world. Welcome, welcome to the broadcast. If you have a Jewish-related question, here's the number to call, 866-34-TRUTH. That's 866-348-7884. Before we get into the UN's vote about Jerusalem, about America's recognition of Jerusalem today, and some related news to that, let me just give you a really neat Thoroughly Jewish Thursday update, and let me thank each of you for praying for me. I'm really excited. I'm blessed. I'm encouraged by what happened yesterday and the day before. We spent, 5-6 hours of steady video recording, studio that was newly built in facilities near us, another major ministry. And we were recording shows. We recorded 13 shows total that will air on METV, which is Middle East TV. Now here's what's really neat about this. If you own a TV in Israel, then presumably you have some type of cable, some type of network that gives you different channels. And if you do, then you get METV. METV is on your TV. You can watch it. You say, yeah, there are lots of channels. Yes, but METV is bringing in programming to Israel that's unique. Popular shows like Touched by an Angel. METV is now doing this. Why? Because it's owned by a Messianic Jewish evangelist who has a heart to reach the gospel. Now, it also airs in the Arab world. It also airs in Europe, I believe, and other places. But the whole focus is Israel. So, it's also going to be airing the Super Bowl live. I think it's the one channel that has the rights to air the Super Bowl live. So that means people will be watching this. Lots of Israelis watch it already. Lots more will be watching it. So we recorded 13 shows. We'll be adding Hebrew captions. These are all specific Jewish outreach shows dealing with objections to Jesus, Yeshua. And in each show, we introduce, interview, and interact with man on the street in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, religious, non-religious men, women, asking them questions about the Bible, asking them questions about their beliefs, about forgiveness of sins, about God, about Jesus, Yeshua. So on each show, I'm interacting with clips of people on the street. It's terrific. God really gave us grace and focus and anointing to do this. That was yesterday. Then today I came in and we just did this in the morning. We recorded 10 3-minute spots, ranging from a condensed version of my testimony, ranging to Jewish objections to Jesus being the Messiah, ranging from opening up messianic prophecy and the like to other scriptural truths, just preaching to people about their need for the Messiah and his atoning death. 3 minutes. And when will these air? Well, some of them will air right during the Super Bowl. So you're watching in Israel. You know, a lot of people do watch commercials, and we tried at the beginning to grab people, to draw them in. So we'll have these 3-minute spots, and then they'll be airing at other times. Like you might be watching an old Western on METV, and we'll come on with one of these spots. In fact, some of them we came with football analogies to start there, to then go to the gospel. So I'm really excited. The shows, the recording went really well. Now we pray that God will use it. We come back. Vote from the UN.
Change the world.
It's been a beautiful spring day in the suburbs of Pennsylvania on this Thursday, June 7th, 1961. You just got home from work and your wife's almost finished preparing one of her typically delicious dinners. Tonight is TV night and everybody's ready to enjoy Ozzie and Harriet and Leave It to Beaver. Of course, a live in-person show is incredible. Who could forget your family outing 2 weeks ago when you all drove into Manhattan and saw My Fair Lady on Broadway? But TV has its own unique appeal, especially with shows like Lassie and Andy Griffith and Walt Disney's Wonderful World of Color and Father Knows Best and the Flintstones. And they're all on at night so the whole family can enjoy them together. Well, on this lovely spring night, you're a bit more tired than you realize, fighting to stay awake through the current Beaver episode, even though it's a bit more suspenseful than normal. But this night, you doze off just before the end of the program, and when you wake up a few minutes later, everything's changed. Well, the TV's still there, except it's giant now, flat, hanging on a wall, exploding with colors, and instead of the smiling Cleaver family, it's... No, this can't be real. A nude couple going on their first date? What's happening? In a panic, you look for another channel, quickly figuring out how to use the newfangled remote control you now hold in your hands, but your eyes can't believe what you're seeing. Did I wake up in hell? But something else is different when you look around the room. You're the only one there. Your 15-year-old son is out with his best friend Robbie, who used to be called Robin, back when he was a girl, along with Robbie's 17-year-old brother. They went to see a new movie in the Hostel series where people are tortured to death and mutilated for fun, but hey, at least he's out of the house. It's better than playing Grand Theft Auto for 6 straight hours where your boy's raping women and killing cops on his video screen. Suddenly, you wake up with a start. This was all a dream. With relief, you look around at your wonderful family smiling at their dad who fell asleep in the middle of TV night, and you think to yourself, thank God, this was only a bad dream. There's no way America, or my family, could ever look like that.
It's The Line of Fire with your host, Dr. Michael Brown, your voice of moral, cultural, and spiritual revolution. Here again is Dr. Michael Brown.
Welcome to today's Thanks, friends, for joining us today on The Line of Fire. It is Thoroughly Jewish Thursday. In a little while, I'll be taking your Jewish-related calls, 866-3-4-TRUTH, 866-348-7884. Now, tomorrow, you've got questions, we've got answers. We'll take any kind of question on any subject. Today, Jewish-related calls. The UN voted, the General Assembly voted overwhelmingly to condemn President Trump and America for recognizing reality, for recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. And there are even some nations that in the past have abstained from voting against Israel, but this time they joined in overwhelmingly. Is the UN fulfilling prophecy? This is being reported around the world. Look at this headline from The Guardian, the UK's Guardian. UN votes resoundingly to reject Trump's recognition of Jerusalem as capital. It says this was a stinging rebuke to America. And remarkably, only 9 nations total voted against this. So Israel and the United States, of course, voted against this. And look at the other nations that voted against this. Who would even think of it? Togo? Micronesia? Where are these? Find these nations to be on the map, right? Nauru, Palau, if I'm pronouncing them right, Marshall Islands, Guatemala, and Honduras. That's it? Why do I say that the UN might be fulfilling prophecy? Why do I even ask the question? I was in Africa, in Mombasa, Kenya, in 1989. I was at a meeting in a city which dominated by Muslims then, and many Christians as well, but a strong Muslim presence. And there were tens of thousands of people gathered for gospel meetings, and an evangelist was preaching a powerful message, and he was telling the people the Bible is God's inspired word. And he used as an example the city of Jerusalem, and he went to Zechariah 12, and he went to Zechariah 14, and he said, it says there that all nations of the earth will be united against Jerusalem, will come against Jerusalem, come against Judah and Jerusalem. And he said, look, that is the one city that is attacked by the whole world and criticized and rejected by the whole world. And lo and behold, now we fast forward to 2017, and the UN actually votes on this. Now, come on, look at the timing. 1967 is when Jerusalem came back into Jewish hands, an undivided Jerusalem. And the wall, there used to be an exterior wall outside the temple, that back in Jewish hands after being separated from 1948 to 1967, a reunified Jerusalem. This was a major event. Now, 50 years later, for the first time, a superpower recognizes Jerusalem as Israel's capital, and the nations of the world join together almost as one, 128 nations saying we condemn this vote, and about 36 abstaining, and then 9 total voting against it. You've got an overwhelming vote against. Is this fulfilling prophecy? Because the prophetic scriptures indicate that at the end of the age, all nations will come against Jerusalem. To me, even if it's not a specific fulfillment of prophecy, in other words, this act is not written in the Bible, it is symbolic of what we can expect. The nations of the world, whether it means every single nation or a coalition of nations or the vast number of nations coming against Jerusalem, here we see it right in front of our eyes. Now, what did our UN ambassador, Nikki Haley, have to say about this? Is she discouraged by it? Is President Trump hanging his head because the nations have come against us and come against Israel? Listen to what Nikki Haley had to say. All right.
The United States will remember this day in which it was singled out for attack in the General Assembly for the very act of exercising our right as a sovereign nation. We will remember it when we are called upon to once again make the world's largest contribution to the United Nations. And we will remember it when so many countries come calling on us, as they so often do, to pay even more and to use our influence for their benefit. America will put our embassy in Jerusalem. That is what the American people want us to do, and it is the right thing to do. No vote in the United Nations will make any difference on that. But this vote will make a difference on how Americans look at the UN and on how we look at countries who disrespect us in the UN. And this vote will be remembered. Thank you.
Good job, Nikki Haley. I am proud of you. And on a day like today, I'm especially proud to be an American, and I'm proud of our president on a day like today as well. We are saying to the UN, you know, you are also a bunch of hypocrites, because we remember world history. Where was the UN's condemnation over Tiananmen Square? Where was the UN's condemnation when Saddam Hussein was gassing to death tens of thousands of Kurds? Where has the UN been with the slaughter in Syria? Where has the UN been with the genocidal attack on Christians in the Middle East to wipe them out? Where has the UN been? And why does the UN constantly condemn Israel and the Jewish people? It is part of the hypocrisy of the UN. It is good for America to stand up to the UN. It is good to expose their hypocrisy and say, you want all this money from us and all you nations, you want us to help you? It's one thing to say we disagree with your decision. It's one thing to say we ourselves will not be moving our embassies to Jerusalem, but to have a vote of the General Assembly, and the whole purpose of that vote is to condemn America's decision. That's when you are publicly disrespecting us, scorning the wishes of the people, and scorning reality, because I remind you, Jerusalem is the functioning capital of Israel, and Jerusalem has never been the capital of a place called Palestine. All right, friends, those are the facts. Those are the simple facts, and all we did was recognize reality. And I just want to do this. I read a list of the nations that that voted against this resolution, this motion. I want to read to you the names of the nations that abstained. Now, some like Mexico used their time on the floor to criticize America, but Just want to put this on the record, along with the nations that voted no. God bless each one of them. Here are the nations that abstained from condemning America: Antigua, Barbuda, Argentina, Australia, Bahamas, Benin, Bhutan, Bosnia-Herzegovina, Burma, Cameroon, Canada, Central African Republic, Colombia, Croatia, Czech Republic, Dominican Republic, Democratic Republic of Congo, El Salvador, Equatorial Guinea, Fiji, Georgia, Guinea-Bissau, Haiti, Honduras, Hungary, Israel, Jamaica, Kenya, Kiribati, Latvia, Lesotho, Malawi, Mexico, Moldova, Mongolia, Panama, Paraguay, Philippines, Poland, Romania, Rwanda, Samoa, San Marino, Sao Tome and Principe, Sierra Leone, South Sudan, St. Kitts Nevis, is that it? St. Lucia, Swaziland, Timor-Leste, Tonga, Trinidad Tobago, Turkmenistan, Tuvalu, Uganda, Ukraine, Vanuatu, and Zambia. Now, I wrongly read Guatemala again there. Guatemala is one of the ones that voted against, but it's on this list that Nikki Haley tweeted out. I think I skipped the others that voted no. You know what's interesting here? Not just say Czech Republic and the Philippines, which already said they're considering relocating their embassy, moving it from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. They're on record immediately. But a number of these countries, African countries, Benin, for example, Cameroon, where we have 2 branches of Fire School of Ministry, Central African Republic, Democratic Republic of Congo. It's interesting how many of these located in Africa abstained. You say, well, they just want American funding. I don't think that's what drove a lot of these nations personally. I think it may have influenced some, but I think they had their other reasons for doing it. Israel has some good relations with some nations in Africa, and others just don't have the same history of Jew hatred and anti-Semitism. And they may also see the effects of radical Islam or the dangers of it, recognize what Israel's up against, whatever the reason. Versus the Christian influence in some of those countries. It was significant. It was worth noting. Okay, we come back. I'm going to go straight to your Jewish-related calls. So much more to come today on Thoroughly Jewish Thursday. Thanks for being part of Yes today. Yeah, I could barely hear you. You don't need a PhD to know that our world is in serious trouble. All it takes is one glance at your social media feed to see that we're at a critical time, not just in our nation's history, but in world history. And this generation of believers is facing an unprecedented barrage of attacks against the truth of the gospel, and they're coming from 1,000 different directions. If ever there was a time for the body to speak out, to raise a righteous standard, and to be a beacon of hope in the midst of a sea of despair, now is that time. Through preaching and teaching and radio and writing and social media, God's given us a voice. I mean, by His grace, many, many lives have been impacted for the gospel around the world. So it's for that reason I want to take you behind the scenes here at Ask Dr. Brown, let you know about some of the exciting projects we're involved in, and share with you how you can help us fulfill this great mandate from the Lord in this battle for the hearts and minds of a whole generation. Over the last several months, our studio has undergone a massive overhaul. We have put thousands of dollars into revamping what is basically our command central. This studio is not just used to produce the Line of Fire radio broadcast, but we also produce in this studio hundreds of YouTube videos that you see, as well as our media for other ministry outlets like God TV and NRB TV. So this studio is really the heartbeat of everything, all the media that we produce at Ask Dr. Brown. And now we are ready to step into a whole new realm, and we can do it with your help. So I'm asking you today to partner with us. Through your generous donations, we can fulfill this mandate from the Lord in this battle for the hearts and minds of a whole generation, and you can help amplify my voice. Friends, stand with us today Together, we're making a difference. And there's music, right?
It's The Line of Fire with your host, Dr. Michael Brown. Get into the Line of Fire now by calling 866-34-TRUTH. Here again is Dr. Michael Brown.
Welcome to today's Thoroughly Jewish Thursday broadcast. You know, on a regular basis, I live with a sense of God's favor. Some days I feel it in a particular way, and I'm feeling it in a particular way today. I really favor of the Lord, supporting Jewish outreach shows to air in Israel. And there's so much we do that I'm tremendously burdened about, taking the gospel to the nations, raising up and sending out laborers to go all around the world, going to spark revival in the church, being a voice of revolution for moral and cultural issues. These things burn in my heart. They're part of my calling. That's why I do what I do. That's why many of you are part of our ministry and pray for us and listen and read and watch and support us. But I know the ultimate calling in that sense, the thing where it all comes together, is in seeing the salvation of Israel. Glad to giving our time, our energy, our effort to that. 866-34-TRUTH. We're going to go to the phones, and we'll start in New Jersey. Tess, welcome to the Line of Fire.
Hi, Dr. Brown. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay, I have a question. In my understanding, the bride of Christ, church, Jewish believers, and Gentile believers in Christ, as Paul talked about how all of Israel are in Israel, but those of Abraham promised are believers. I have been seeing popping up related that say that is a lie. That the bride of Christ is actually as Revelation.
Yeah.
You know, and we as Christians are simply the body of their part, but we are not the actual bride.
Yeah.
Can you expand on that? Have you heard any of this?
Yeah. I mean, I've heard different things like that, adding in that we're part of the groom because we're the body of Messiah, therefore we can't be the bride. Now, your understanding is 100% correct. Bride of Messiah it consists of all believers, Jews and Gentiles, who have put their faith in God and put their faith in his Messiah. We are bride of Messiah, and Jew and Gentile in Jesus make up the full seed of Abraham, the physical seed with believers and the spiritual seed of believers. Exactly as you said, we are the bride of Messiah. Ephesians 5 makes that very, very clear. And the book of Revelation tells us in Revelation 21 that the New Jerusalem comes down from heaven like a bride adorned for her husband. Jesus, the Messiah, is not going to marry the New Jerusalem. The whole parable or example of marriage, literal example of Adam and Eve, the two becoming one, being a parable or an example of Jesus, Yeshua, and his bride becoming one. And now we are one with him. He prays in John 17 that we would be one with him as he is one with the Father. Of course, that's exactly what the text is saying. And there are various metaphors. To say that we are the body of Messiah, does that mean that we can't be branches on the vine? If he's the vine, we can't be branches because elsewhere we're represented as members of the body, you know, and one is an ear and one is a nose and one is an eye. And obviously these are just metaphors. We're not as physical, literal body any more than we are physical, literal branches on a vine. And the same way, physical, literally, we're not a physical, literal bride in that sense, but spiritually, yes, all believers, Jew and Gentile in Jesus, definitely make up the bride of Messiah. And again, some of these cites they may have something good and right to say, and they may correct an error. Then they bring in other errors. That's what normally happens when we take our focus off what really matters most. That is Jesus Yeshua, pearl, great price. So your original understanding exactly right. You can throw out the idea that it's a lie. 866-34-TRUTH. Let's go to Tamil in Charleston, West Virginia. Welcome to the Line of Fire.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Brown. It's a privilege to be on the show with you. I was just wondering, here in West Virginia, I have rabbi friends. They're very big with AIPAC and everything else. Well, they're total crickets on this whole UN resolution. All the rabbis here are concerned with is bringing refugees in. So, as you know,
so I would take it they're not very religious. They're more reform, liberal.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, but you say they are involved. They are involved in AIPAC, which is strong American Israel political lobby working together. You say they are involved in that.
Well, yes, but they never promote it. All they do is promote bringing in refugees.
Yeah,
and they're lined up. I was told also that they direct. The rabbi told me that he's closer to Muslims than he is Christians because Muslims at least believe in the same God. He actually blessed on Ramadan, bless them.
Yeah.
That hopes Allah blesses them for Ramadan or something like that. I mean, it just, and I, tried to give him scriptures.
Yeah.
But another thing that I come across is, right there, it says that, anyone against Israel, they're going to be like a vapor. And that's what it says in Hosea 3:13. And then in Obadiah 1:13, he talks about that, everyone that comes against Israel will just no more,
Yeah.
And
So let me just jump in because I've got a break coming up. First, I appreciate your passion and your clarity here in seeking to interact with the rabbis. Keep doing that. This is typical of liberal Judaism in America and in other nations. Now, first, I commend these rabbis for having a social conscience. Commend these rabbis for caring about the refugees and those in need, things like that. Not just being so Israel-centric that everything's about Israel and Israel only. I think it's great that they have that heart. But if you go back to the history of Reform Judaism, which is a couple 100+ years old, it was a real reaction against a Jewish focus. We are the chosen people. We are the chosen nation. There's a reaction against the dietary laws, which were keeping us separated, and even a reaction against there's going to be a rebuilt temple, a rebuilt sacrifices. Those are the old things that we have evolved out of. And we are a prophetic people, and we are a socially oriented people. And so Reform Judaism really swung in those ways. In some ways, it re-embraced some traditional Judaism. Otherwise, it would just be totally out there on its own. But by and large, it does not have the heart for Israel today that evangelical Christians do. And if Reform Jews all over were to stand up, this is the right thing, this is the good thing, recognize Jerusalem, that we'd be alienating ourselves from the other nations, whereas we need to be part of the international fraternity and working together. And I could almost guarantee you that the vast majority of these liberal Jews did not vote for Donald Trump either. We'll be right back.
On the program today is Dr. Michael Brown. Good to have you on, sir.
Great to be with you. Thanks.
Yeah, it's good to have you on again, I should say. When it comes to this whole idea of the marriage crisis that we're in as a culture, should we capitulate at this time? I mean, what do you think our stance should be as a church as it relates to marriage?
Yeah, this is not the time to capitulate or throw in the towel. This is the time to push back. The Supreme Court ruling on marriage, that's our Roe v. Wade moment. This is our wake-up call. Look, when the Roe v. Wade passed, there was tremendous hostility to the pro-life position in America. And we were told it's over, the younger generation embraced embraces abortion. Look at how things have radically changed. 1966, April, cover story, Time magazine, Is God Dead? 5 years later, June 1971, cover story, Time magazine, The Jesus Revolution. Things can turn on a dime. Things can turn radically. I believe that gay activism has within itself the seeds of self-destruction. Once you redefine marriage, you render it meaningless. The further this goes, the ones who are going to be standing are the ones who hold to marriage and family as God intended. So rather than this being the end of the culture wars, this is the wake-up call. This is the beginning. And I believe that unless Jesus comes first, we're going to see the tide turn.
Author, national speaker, and theologian, Dr. Michael Brown. Your voice of moral, cultural, and spiritual revolution. Get into the line of fire now by calling 866-34-TRUTH. Here again is Dr. Michael Brown.
Thank you for joining us on Thoroughly Jewish Thursday on the Line of Fire. I am just about to send this tweet out now. I'm going to read it to you as I wrote it. The USA was not tested today before the UN. UN was tested before God. Most of the nations failed God's test. Any surprise? No surprise at all. But what I like best is not just, of course, that we were being attacked and challenged for recognizing Jerusalem. No. Not just that. What I like best is that we said to the nations, we're taking note of your vote. You know, you did not have to vote to condemn us. You could just say, we differ with your decision. Join in a vote that is called, quote, a stinging rebuke. USA. I don't look at it that we were being tested at all. I look at it that God's looking down at the nations of the earth and at the leaders of those nations and saying, where do you stand when it comes to Jerusalem? Where do you stand when it comes to righteousness? Where do you stand when it comes to doing what is right, even when it is not popular? UN was tested and found wanting today. Here's the number to call with your Jewish-related questions, 866-348-7884. For everyone watching on YouTube, watching on Facebook, welcome to the broadcast. In fact, Matt, if we have any of those shots available, let me know and we can put them up. Everybody listening on radio, you will not miss a split second, but those watching, you'll get the double effect. We did shooting yesterday, the day before, and this morning, shooting for our Jewish outreach shows that will air in Israel. There'll be captions put up for them. And some of them, we did full half-hour shows interacting with man on the street stuff in Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. We did that yesterday, the day before, all day long, 13 shows we recorded. But this morning, just recorded these 3-minute slots. And some of them will air during the Super Bowl. So I was praying and thinking about creative ways to, because you got somebody watching the Super Bowl. Now you got a break, 3-minute commercial break. Okay. Now sometimes it's a Super Bowl tradition, those who watch the Super Bowl, to actually watch the clips, the commercials, of which was the best commercial. And every so often it's a gross thing. That's stupid. You got to turn your head. But otherwise, you know, some of them are funny, which was the commercials weren't so good this year. And other people just mute them during the commercials. But the goal is if somebody's actually watching, all right, and this will be watched by many people in Israel, Americans living in Israel, but American football is popular around the world. People will just be watching the game. 3-minute commercial. How do we draw the person in? And then if we can get them to start listening, hopefully they'll keep listening. And obviously we're praying that they'll listen. So I started one. I got this idea about the NFL. Man, this is a violent sport. Sometimes one player's injured, he gets a concussion, brain damage, but that wakes up the whole league, and the whole league begins to think about player safety. So one player suffered, and now other players won't. And then, you know, I was reading one time about this young person got in a terrible car accident, was killed, because they didn't have their seatbelt on. And that started a movement in that community for the young people to wear seatbelts. So one person died, but now other lives were saved. I said, well, what if somebody actually volunteered their life, gave their life so that by their life, other people could be saved, and from there preach the gospel. So let's pray that the Holy Spirit will draw people in. Okay, we come back. I want to interact with, I want to interact with a clip from Hanan Ashrawi, Palestinian, identifies as Christian, longtime activist, formerly with PLO, Yasser Arafat. Let's see what she has to say about Israel today. Then we'll take your calls right here. Moses. Do you know that there's a lot of controversy about this name because of the explanation that we have for it in the book of Exodus? Now we know when we have Hebrew names that come by way of Greek, Latin into English, that we end up with an S instead of an SH. So Solomon was originally Shlomo, and Saul was originally Shaul, because Greek did not have the sh sound. So the same with Moses. Moshe ultimately becomes Moses in English, coming by way of Greek originally. But that's not the issue. That's not the controversy. In the book of Exodus, when Pharaoh's daughter sees Moses, the baby Moses, right? She says, Kimishitihu min hamayim, because I took him, I drew him out of the water. Well, that works in Hebrew. So Moshe, from a play on words that I drew him from Masha, out of the water. But the problem is, why is Pharaoh's daughter speaking Hebrew? Why isn't she speaking Egyptian? So some say this was during a period of what's called Hyksos domination. They were Semitic-speaking people, and the Hyksos would have spoken a Semitic language, so it would have worked there. Others say, no, this is just a play on words. She didn't actually speak these words. This is a play on words put on her lips by a later Hebrew author, and that's all they're trying to do. And you say, but it's in the Bible. The Bible says it happened like that. And then others would say, well, in Egyptian, this word is related to the word son, and that's all it means. It's an Egyptian word. So amazingly enough, the simple word Moses, as explained in the book of Exodus, is subject to all kinds of scholarly controversy. Interesting subject, but it's
Dr. Michael Brown.
Thanks, friends, for joining us today on The Line of Fire. It is Thoroughly Jewish Thursday, 866-34-TRUTH. I'm going to get to your calls momentarily. All right. The world is condemning America for standing with Israel and recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. And what you'll constantly hear is America is standing for injustice. America is standing against the Palestinians. America is standing against history, etc., etc. Listen to what longtime Palestinian spokesperson Hanan Ashrawi had to say on BBC talking about this very issue.
Look, Mike Pence has been talking about God's will. He's not talking politics. He's talking biblical dogma and exegesis. My God did not tell me what his God tells him. I belong to the oldest Christian tradition in the world, and I don't believe that God ordained that the world has to be unjust to the Palestinians. We are the original Christians. We are the owners of the land. We are the people who've been here for centuries. How dare they come here and give me biblical treatises and absolutist positions? If he wants to talk politics, legality, humanity, morality, fine, he will find people. If he wants to come and tell me it's been ordained, this is what the Bible told me, then I think he should go preach in a church rather than talk politics.
Let's talk history, right? Let's talk history. The Palestinian Christians, even if they go back to ancient Near Eastern, Middle Eastern Christians, which are very, very early in church history, no, they are not the first, quote, Christians. The first Christians are Jews. First, quote, Christians are Jewish followers of Jesus. So let's start there. Let's get the record straight. Peter was not a Palestinian. John was not a Palestinian. Jacob, James was not a Palestinian. Saul, Paul, they were not Palestinians. They identified as Jews who recognized Jesus, Yeshua, as the Messiah. That's number one. Number two, since when did Palestinian Christians own the land? Did they own the land of Israel in Jesus' day? No, this was Jewish land under Roman control. Did they own it a century later, 2 centuries later, 5, 7? No. And then Islam overruns the area, and then you have different competing groups. You know, the Ottoman Empire, then you have Christian rule at a different time through the Catholic Church, etc. When did Palestinian Christians, quote, own the land? They haven't. And let's go further. As far as the city of Jerusalem, when was that the capital of some type of Palestinian state? That never existed. There was never a Palestinian state, and Jerusalem was never its capital. So everything that's being said is absolutely false and wrong. Historically, geopolitically, in every way, factually, it's wrong. Now, Vice President Pence happens to be on the right side of this, in agreement with God and the scriptures, but putting that all aside, history, facts, information, they are completely against her position. End of subject. 866-34-TRUTH. Let us go to the phones, starting with David in Los Angeles. Welcome to the Line of Fire.
Hi, thank you, Dr. Brown. Really trying to educate myself on the topic of land, and so just help me to understand something. So I guess 1,000 years prior to they built the temple there, but was it originally the land of Canaan? And I have listened to the Israel an Evil Occupier. That helped quite a bit.
Great.
I'm just really trying to be able to discuss with people what's going on.
Yeah, sure. So originally, this is part of the land of Canaan. Yeah, absolutely. That's how it starts. It's a Jebusite city, and it's first mentioned, I believe, in Joshua the 10th chapter. Did a whole show a few days ago just about scriptural references to Jerusalem, so you might want to look that up and listen to it wherever you listen to our archives. It's first mentioned there. Adoni-Tzedek was the king. It's possible that Genesis 14 mentioning Shalem, that's speaking of the same Jerusalem, and Melchizedek, the king of that. But otherwise, first mention, part of the conquest of Canaan, all right? And then David starts in Hebron. He's the king there for 7 years. Then he moves his capital to Jerusalem, takes the city, from captures the stronghold, takes the city, and one part of the city was called Zion, and it ends up being synonymous with Jerusalem as a whole. He reigns there for 33 years, and then it's after that that Solomon builds the temple there. So that has been the capital of united Israel since 1,000 years before the time of Jesus. And then when Jerusalem was destroyed by the Babylonians in 586 BC, there were still Jews living there, but otherwise the city decimated, the temple destroyed. Where did the Jewish people come back? They came back there. They rebuilt the temple there. They rebuilt the palaces there. That, again, was the central city. That was the city commemorated, for example, in Psalm 137, when the psalmist says, "If I forget you, O Jerusalem, let my right hand wither." That's the city that the prophet Isaiah spoke of by inspiration of the Spirit in Isaiah 62, saying that God has raised up intercessors to pray for Jerusalem and to give God no rest till he establishes Jerusalem as the praise of all the earth. So this remains the central city, and it was the city that the pilgrims would come to. So 3 times every year, Jewish men would have to go to Jerusalem. So in the time of Jesus, the city would swell in number, would double, triple, quadruple in number as Jewish men came to make pilgrimage there 3 times a year. And then there's the Jewish revolt, which is crushed, temple destroyed in the year 70. Then the second revolt, which takes place roughly 132 to 135 of this era, Bar Kokhba is slain, the revolt put down, and then Jews are pushed out of Jerusalem. Hadrian, the emperor, fights back aggressively against the Jewish presence, basically banishes Jews from Jerusalem, now makes it an area sacred to another Roman god, and then calls the whole land Palestine, associated with the Philistines, in mockery of Israel's enemy, and to further mock the Jewish people. But it was the city that Jewish people prayed towards through the ages. It was the city to which Daniel prayed in exile in Daniel, the 6th chapter. And every year, the hope, Passover celebration next year in Jerusalem. Traditional Jews pray every day for the rebuilding of Jerusalem and Zion. And then you had different ones owning Palestine, whether it was just general different people groups, whether it was Muslim groups, whether it was Catholic groups. You had lots of different nations living there. You had an ongoing Arab presence. You did have an ongoing Christian presence, an ongoing Jewish presence. And then what happened in the late 1800s, more and more Jews began to come back to the land, settle in the land, develop the land. So there were less of them than the Arab population, mainly Muslim, but a good number Christian. But they were not at war with each other. As the land began to be developed more and more in the late 1800s, early 1900s, that brought with it now a wave of Arabs coming in to work the land and to live there, because it was finally being developed, because it had not been developed basically for hundreds and hundreds of years. It was swampland, it was languishing, and Jerusalem at times had very, very small populations, because it was not the center of the Muslim world, and it wasn't the center of the Christian world. It was only the center of one world. That was the Jewish world. And then, of course, God began to bring more and more Jewish people in. Arab population increases. And then that's when you start to see in the 1920s and 30s an aggressive radical Muslim resistance and attacks on Jewish people. And on, and then the history, of course, goes on from there. But that's the long and short of it. And from 1950 on, Jerusalem has been the functioning capital of Israel. It is the functioning capital of Israel. It's always been the central city of Israel and the Jewish people, 3,000 years. It has never been the central city of Islam. It's never been a capital of the Palestinian state. Those are the facts.
Okay, that is so helpful. And I just wanted to say, too, Nikki Haley, watching her UN, that just makes me so proud. I mean, so proud to be an American.
Yeah.
And I read your book, The Real Kosher Jesus, and I'm just learning so much. So I just want to say thank you.
Well, David, thanks for your interest. And again, I said a lot. So wherever you listen, wherever you watch this show, you can read it and get all the information. Thanks so much for taking an interest. There's a video I want to recommend to you that you'll find really helpful. It's a lecture I gave at the University of South Florida a few years ago. Israel and Evil Occupied. A local Messianic group works on campus, tried to set up a debate with a Palestinian leader or a Muslim leader. We couldn't get anyone willing to debate. So I said, all right, I'll just do the lecture. And they got this great big hall that seated hundreds and hundreds. Whereas if I just did a lecture, I think we get 30, 40 people maybe at the campus. So I don't know, we had under 100, I guess, in that. But we got this great big lecture hall. So I got to put these big PowerPoint slides up. So it's a nice video presentation. I said, okay, then I want an open mic Q&A after. Security said, no, we're not going to allow that. People have to submit their questions in writing. So there are two videos, actually. We answer the question, is Israel an evil occupier? Just go to AskDrBrown.org, AskDrBrown.org. Type in the word occupier, and you'll find the lecture and the Q&A. We'll be right back. I want to present to you a unique way that you can partner together with me to reach Jewish people with the good news of Jesus, Yeshua, the Messiah. Hey, Paul wrote that the gospel is to the Jew first, but many of us don't know how to reach the Jewish people with the gospel. Can I tell you, we have a unique open door, and Jewish people are ready to hear, but we need your help. When I was in Israel recently, my last hour in Jerusalem, about a dozen different people came up to me, and they wanted to thank me for the impact of our message. One Jewish woman came up to me, a believer in Jesus. She said, you saved my son's life. He was falling away. He was getting pulled by other objections to Jesus. He read your material. He's back in the faith. A young man came up to me. He said he and his Orthodox Jewish friends, here he is, I mean, with the yarmulke, the head covering, the traditional Jewish outfit, he said he and his Jewish friends, his Orthodox friends, watch my debates with rabbis. A few years ago, I was able to lead a Holocaust survivor to faith in Jesus. He was a brilliant man, an atheist who had fled the Holocaust. He read my books on answering Jewish objections to Jesus, came to faith, led his wife to the Lord before they left this world. Friends, we have the resources. We have books, ready to be translated in Hebrew to be distributed in Israel. We have our Real Messiah website, unique for reaching Jewish people, Orthodox Jews with the gospel, ready to be translated in Hebrew, ready to do internet campaigns to get into every home in Israel. Every cell phone in Israel can have this message, but we need your help. Every gift to our ministry will literally help us reach another Jewish person with the good news of Jesus the Messiah. Go to askdrbrown.org. AskDrBrown.org, and when you go there, we will partner together to bring salvation to Israel and the Jewish people. Together, we're making a great difference.
Now is the time to reach the lost sheep of the house of Israel, to share in this end-time harvest of Jewish souls, and to find out how to receive this 2-DVD set, Predestination, Election, and the Will of God Debate. Go to AskDrBrown.org and click the TV banner.
Dr. Michael Brown.
Look, Mike Pence has been talking about God's will.
Welcome, friends, to the Line of Fire. 866. All right, we don't need that music now. Okay, thanks. 866-348-7884. You know, I was gonna do some teaching today about rabbinic tradition, other rabbis right. I have a whole volume 5 of Answering Jewish Objections to Jesus, where I get into that in depth, and I've got teaching series on it. So I'm not going to go there today, just because so much happened in the news today, and then so many calls and questions. I want to get to as many as I can. 866-34-TRUTH. Friends, if you want to help us with a year-end gift, standing with us in our Jewish ministry outreach, thank you in advance for doing it. It's tax deductible. The biggest thing is we're sharing the heavenly reward, being Jewish men and women in the eternal kingdom that have come in through your prayers, giving. Go to AskDrBrown.org, AskDrBrown.org. Click donate. If large or small at this time of the year is really precious to us and greatly appreciated. There's a question that Jay has on YouTube. Why would God allow 6 million Jews to be tortured and died? Why did he stop it himself? Why didn't he stop it himself? I think you're asking. Jay, it's a very painful question. Over 1 million babies and children among those killed. That raises other questions as well. Why did God allow Stalin to take the lives of more than 20 million? God allow Mao Zedong to take the lives of tens and tens of millions? Why didn't God stop Pol Pot from exterminating, half Cambodia's population? Why doesn't God stop a man from raping a little child right now? Doesn't God stop these horrific acts of human beings? It's painful, agonizing, it's horrific. It's the reality. God gave human beings free will. God gives human beings free will the same way he allows someone to mock him YouTube today. The same way he allows someone to choose to leave the church and become a Buddhist. The same way he allows someone to decide to start to drink a little too much and they end up becoming an alcoholic. The same way he allows a man to leave his wife and commit adultery and break that woman's heart and shatter that marriage and family. He allows us to do all kinds of things every second of every day, and he does not stop us because he gave us free will. There are consequences to our actions, and there is this world and the world to come. So those consequences will be experienced. But bottom line, these are choices we make. Even some of them horrific, murderous, overwhelming evil. That being said, there's good evidence that God ultimately intervened and shut down Hitler before he destroyed even more lives. And God being a redeemer out of the ashes of the Holocaust, Israel's birth as a nation, there's no way the UN ever would have voted for it if not the horrors of the Holocaust. God rebirthing Israel, it doesn't make up for the lives lost, but these human choices, just like the small ones we make every day, so also these big ones have massive consequences. That's the reality. I've written about it extensively, also in Volume 1 of Answering Jewish Objections. This is Why Did God Allow the Holocaust? Answering it in a religious, spiritual, Jewish way. that the most natural, simple answer, God gave us free will. We will give account, perfect judge. On that day, everything will be made right. Right now in this world, there are all kinds of things that are wrong and sinful. All right, let us go to TJ in Bellington, Washington. Thanks so much for holding. Welcome to the Line of Fire.
Hey, thanks. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
I've got a question about 70 weeks of Daniel, and I would love to know what Orthodox Jews think about that in chapter 9 of Daniel.
Yeah, it's really interesting. The normal Orthodox view, it separates the weeks into 3 periods. One week, it takes them to mean 7 years. And then, excuse me, 7 weeks are a period of 49 years, period of 60, excuse me, we'll get this right. You've got the 7-year period at the end, okay, which is taken as culminating at the time of the Second Temple. The years are looked at as being consecutive. Exactly where they start, there is debate for that. But it's understood that there are 2 different anointed figures. The first one could be Cyrus or somebody else, and then there's another anointed figure that dies, so a leader. They don't see any reference to anything messianic in terms of pointing to Jesus or that time period. What they understand it to be is somehow culminating in the days of the Second Temple, and yet preparatory for the Messianic era. And to me, honestly, it's one of the weakest traditional Jewish interpretations in the Bible teaching. Here's where you can see it. Here's where you can see it, all right? Jot this down. CHABAD.org. That's Chabad. Chabad.org. And then what you want to do is then type in, have a space, and type in Rashi commentary, RASHI commentary. And what you'll do is a page will come up, and it gives you all of the Bible in a Jewish translation. So you want to go, Daniel is what's called the Nivi, the Ketuvim, the writings, okay? So you want to go there, because that's where Daniel is. It's not found in the prophets in the canon. And then it'll give you the option to hide or show Rashi's commentary. What you want to do is show his commentary. Rashi lived 1040 to 1105. He is the preeminent medieval and for all time Jewish Bible commentator and Talmudic commentator. And you'll see his explanation there. Rashi's brilliant with great insight. Honestly, this to me is maybe the weakest or one of the weakest Rashi commentaries in all the scripture. So you'll see it culminating with the destruction of the temple, that time period and Herod and so on and so forth. And then somehow it ties in somewhere with the Messiah. And it really, it'll kind of leave you hanging like, what? That's it. Yeah. So Chabad.org. And then leave a space and just put in Rashi commentary. And when you go there, remember Daniel is found in the Ketuvim and the writings along Psalms and some of the later historical books, things like that. Okay. And then you'll find it. All right. 866-34-TRUTH. Brian in Loganville, Georgia. Time is really short. Give us your question as quick as you can.
Yes, sir. The Babylonian exile, the Ark of the Covenant, during the time when the temple veil was ripped in two. What was behind the temple veil since the Ark of the Covenant was there?
Oh, okay. The Ark of the Covenant is missing, so the tablets of the law missing, Aaron's rod that budded missing. So what was actually there? You don't have the Ark Covenant. What is actually left that's supposed to be there? Tell you what, Brian, take a look. There's a list in Hebrews, the 9th chapter. And the question is there actually anything? The high priest would still go in there, but what was there? Was there anything of all the essential stuff that was there? No. Something's missing. Yeah, interesting. Hey, friends, back with you tomorrow, ready for your questions.